Today we are doing 3-2, and what we're going to be talking about are complex numbers. Sure, right now you guys are going, gosh, I wonder what a complex number is. Well, what it really is the square root of -1. We're using -r here, but it's -1, and that is I. That is definitely going to be something you will want to commit to memory. The square root of -1 is I. What's interesting is if you squared both sides, the square root and the square cancel out, so I squared is the same thing as -1. That's the second one that you're going to want to commit to memory. That the square root of -1 is I, and I squared is -1. So let's go ahead and do some problems. Well, on that first one, the square root of -25, you're going to think of that as -25, or I'm sorry, 25 times -1, which would be 5 times I. So 5I. On the second one, 72, you can break that up into 36 times 2 times -1. They're doing it in steps here. I probably would have done it all at once. And the square root of 36 is 6. Radical 2, you can't do anything with. So you've got a 6 radical 2 I. And they do the same thing I do. Is I always like to have the I in front of that radical. I think it just makes it look a little bit neater. And on our last one, you have -5 times the square root of -9. Well, the square root of -9 is 3i. You take that 3i times -5, and you get -15i. All right, here are some for you to try on your own. Take a second, pause the computer, give it a shot, and then check your answers. All right, I like this question. This is almost like a SAT or ACT type of question. It looks like it would be difficult, but it's really not. So what we have here is a real number 10 and the imaginary part, which is yi. Those are called complex numbers. The real part always comes first, and then the imaginary part comes second. So at 2x means that you're going to have the real part. So you set those equal to each other. 2x equals 10. Well, that's easy. X equals 5. Then you take the imaginary part, -7i equals yi. Solve for y. Y is going to be -7. So you just figured it out. Don't overthink these ones. All right, here are a couple for you to try on your own. Remember, set the real parts equal to the imaginary parts. Pause the computer, give it a shot. Not a shout, a shot. I'm going crazy with the keyboard here. Let's check our answers. 9 is x, y is -3, x equals 9, 3i equals -yi. Solve. For number 6, -4.5 for x, 9 equals -2x, and 4yi equals 3i. Y is going to be 0.75. All right, so complex numbers. If you are combining complex numbers, this is just a fancy way of saying combine like parts. If you're adding them, add up your real numbers, add up your imaginary parts. Difference, subtract your imaginary, subtract your real. So let's go ahead and try one. So here on A, you've got 8 minus I plus 5 plus 4i. You're going to combine your real parts, which are 8 and 5. Then you're going to combine your imaginary parts, which is negative I and 4I. So 8 plus 5 is 13. Negative 1 plus 4 is 3. Your answer is going to be 13 plus 3I. You can't go any further than that. On part B, be careful of your signs. It's going to be 7 minus 3, negative 6 minus negative 6, which is really negative 6 plus 6. Which you're going to end up with 0I, which you don't need to write because that just means that you don't have an imaginary part to that complex number. C, combine your reals, combine your imaginary parts. They did it in a couple steps. I probably would have gone and just done it all at once, but that doesn't really matter. You're going to get the same answer either way. 11 minus 2I. All right, multiplication. This is where it gets a little bit more exciting. I will give you a hint right now. Remember at the beginning of the notes, I told you I squared is the same thing as negative 1. That's going to come back into play. Oh, that's not what I meant to hit. So you're just going to distribute first. You're going to get negative 24I plus 4I squared. Well, I squared is negative 1. Plug that in. And you always want your real part to come before your imaginary. On part B, you're going to have to FOIL. Have some fun with foiling. Combine your like terms. Substitute in negative 1 for I squared. And here, you're going to have to combine your negative 36 plus 14. So negative 22 plus 71I. And when you are doing some of these problems, you will get answers that look a little odd. Have confidence in yourself. You're doing it correctly. All right. This is kind of the you try section of the notes. Pause your computer. Try these out. And I will put the answers up in just a second. Ignore that part right there. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is after we do multiplication and go back to an addition, they don't look at the signs carefully. Make sure you notice that that is an addition problem and not a multiplication. All right, we are going to move on to solving some of these. Before, whenever we were solving and we ended up with a negative underneath a radical, we always said no real solution. Well, that part is true. There is no real solution. However, there is an imaginary solution. You do it the same way that you would any other problem. You subtract 4, take the square root, plus or minus 2i, because we're taking the square root of negative 4. So you have two solutions, positive 2i and negative 2i. They're not real, they're the imaginary number set. On this one, write the problem, add 11, divide by 2, take the square root, simplify the square root, and you get plus or minus 3i radical 2. Again, that is two solutions. Find the zeros. That just means you take out f of x and put 0 in. So it should be 0 equals 4x squared plus 20x. Subtract your 20, divide by 4, take the square root. You get plus or minus I radical 5. All right. This is a you try section. Go ahead, pause the computer, try these out. Let's see how you do. I'll put the answers up in just a few minutes. A few seconds. All right, that's all I have for you today. Hope you enjoyed.